Maryland, 1975. A cold case finally solved. And the arrest? It shocked an entire community. Two little girls, sisters, 12 and 10 years old. They walked to a shopping mall on a Tuesday afternoon, half a mile from home. And they never came back. For 42 years, nobody knew what happened. But here's the part that will keep you up tonight. The man responsible? He walked into a police station 1 week after they vanished. He sat down. He talked to detectives. And they let him walk right out the door. The answer was sitting in a filing cabinet for 38 years. Stay with me, because this one hurts. Let's start with a number. 2 hours. That's how much time Sheila and Catherine Lyon had between leaving a shopping mall and being home for dinner. 2 hours. For a walk that takes 15 minutes. Now here's a second number. Half a mile. That's the distance between Wheaton Plaza and their front door on Pliers Mill Road. A route they knew. A route they'd walked before. 2 hours. Half a mile. They never covered it. It's Tuesday, March 25th, 1975. First day of Easter vacation. No school. The girls asked to walk to the mall, to see the Easter decorations and meet some friends. Their mother Mary says yes, suggests they grab pizza before heading home. Sheila is 12. Catherine is 10. Honor roll students. Both of them. Inside that mall, their older brother Jay spots them. He's 15. They're sitting there eating pizza, exactly like they said they would. He doesn't stop, doesn't wave, just keeps walking. Ordinary moment. Except it wasn't. That was the last time anyone in that family ever saw those girls. They left the mall a little after 2 o'clock. By 6, dinner is getting cold. Mary is annoyed, the way any mother gets annoyed when kids lose track of time. By 7, annoyed is gone. Something else has replaced it. She picks up the phone and calls the police. Now understand what kind of family just reported 2 children missing. Their father is John Lyon. And in 1975, that name means something. He's a radio personality at MUL, one of the biggest stations in Washington, D.C. Colleagues call him a swingman. He can DJ, he can sing, he can host. Half the region wakes up, calm to this man's voice. Which means when his daughters vanish, the entire region feels it. And here's the detail that makes it sting. Both girls were days from their birthdays. Sheila turning 13 on March 30th. Catherine turning 11 the day before. Their parents had promised a special birthday dinner, already planned. That dinner never happened. The next morning, the search begins. And watch how fast it scales. Hundreds of volunteers sweeping the woods around Wheaton. Then Maryland's lieutenant governor steps in and orders 122 National Guardsmen into a Montgomery County forest. Soldiers, searching for 2 little girls. They find nothing. No clothing, no shoes, no sign either girl ever set foot in those woods. Then, the phone rings. An anonymous caller reaches John Lyon with a demand. $10,000 in a briefcase, left in a courthouse bathroom in Annapolis. Now pay attention to what police do here, because this is smart. They approve the drop, but they don't fill that briefcase with $10,000. They have John put in $101. Why that number? Because in Maryland at the time, stealing over $100 is a felony. $1 over the line. That briefcase wasn't a ransom payment. It was bait. Whoever grabbed it would hand police a felony arrest on a silver platter. So John Lyon walks into that courthouse, a man whose voice half of Washington recognizes, carrying a briefcase into a public bathroom. He sets it down and walks away. Nobody comes for it. Not that day. Not ever. The caller rings back later with an excuse. Too many police around the courthouse. Couldn't risk the pickup. And John Lyon, a father running out of options, draws one hard line. He says, I need to hear my daughter's voices before I do anything else. Silence. The caller never makes contact again. To this day, nobody knows if he ever had the girls at all, or was just a man chasing money off a family's worst nightmare. So where does that leave the investigation? No trace evidence, no ransom pickup, no suspect in custody. But there was one thing, one thread, and it came from a child. While Sheila and Catherine were still inside that mall, a friend of theirs noticed something. A young man, staring at the girls. Not glancing, staring, so long and so intensely that this friend walked up and confronted him about it, face to face. Think about that. A kid saw the danger before any adult did. She gave police a description. Young, long hair, late teens, maybe early 20s. A detective turned her words into a composite sketch, and that sketch went into a file, a folder, in an archive, where it sat, untouched, unconnected, for 38 years. If you're new to Crime Watch Hub, this is the moment to hit subscribe, because this channel digs into the files everyone else forgets. And what detectives eventually found inside this one isn't just how the case cracked open. It's proof the answer was there the whole time. But before anyone opened that file, the investigation spent decades chasing two men who didn't do it. Before we get to the suspects, you need to understand what this case did to a community. Kensington, Maryland. Quiet. Middle class. The kind of suburb where kids played outside, and parents didn't think twice. After March 1975, they thought twice. Parents stopped letting children walk to Wheaton Plaza, stopped letting them roam after school. The Montgomery County State's attorney would later put it bluntly. That day in March was the day the region lost its innocence, and the tips reflected it. Well into the early 1980s, police were still logging over a dozen tips a year on a case from 1975. Each one checked. Each one checked. A dead end. But two names rose above the noise. Two men who looked right for all the right reasons. And both of them were wrong. Suspect number one. Fred Coffey Jr. Here's why detectives leaned in. Coffey would later be convicted of serious crimes against children, sentenced in North Carolina in 1979. This was a genuinely dangerous man. Not a theory, a documented offender, and a witness placed him in suburban Maryland, near Wheaton Plaza, on April 1, 1975, exactly 1 week after Sheila and Catherine disappeared. Now here's the detail that made him fit. In cases where Coffey was the prime suspect, investigators noticed a pattern. He used objects to draw children in. Fishing poles, metal detectors, props, things that make a kid curious and lower their guard. Now think back to Wheaton Plaza. Witnesses there described an older man approaching kids with a microphone and a tape recorder, asking them to speak into it. An object, a prop, a lure. Same playbook. That's what detectives saw, so they dug. And the connection never came. No physical evidence. No witness putting Coffey with the Lyon sisters. Nothing tying him to March 25th. He was never charged in this case. Not then. Not ever. The pattern matched. The proof didn't. Dead end number one. Suspect number two. Raymond Molesky, a Maryland local. And on paper, he looked even stronger. Start with the face. Molesky bore a real resemblance to that composite sketch. The one drawn from the friend's description. Then the walk. Witnesses had described a man moving with a slight limp. Molesky walked with a slight limp. Add a documented history of sexual offenses. Face, walk, record. 3 boxes. Checked. Then in November 1977, Molesky did something that put him at the top of every list. He killed his own wife and his own son. A domestic dispute turned fatal. He was convicted and sentenced to 40 years. Case closed on Molesky the murderer. But the Leon question stayed open, because from inside prison, informants started talking. They claimed Molesky said he knew something about the Lyon sisters, and that he'd trade that information for better prison conditions, knowledge as currency. So investigators called the bet. April 1982. Authorities searched his former residence, top to bottom. They found nothing. Not one item. Not one trace. Nothing connecting Raymond Molesky to Sheila and Catherine Lyon. Was he lying for privileges? Was he repeating prison gossip? Or did he actually know something? In 2004, Molesky died behind bars, and whatever the truth was, it went with him. Dead end number 2. Now step back and look at what those decades did to this investigation. The detectives who caught the case in 1975 worked it, aged with it. Retired. New detectives came in and inherited the binders. They read the same reports, chased the same threads, and landed at the same wall. No bodies, no crime scene, no physical evidence pointing at any one person. Just a case that followed the department, year after year, always open, never answered. And here's the hard truth about tunnel vision. Coffey and Molesky weren't bad suspects. They were logical, documented offenders, real proximity, real pattern overlap. Any competent detective would have chased both men. But while the investigation looked outward, at convicted criminals and prison informants, the actual answer wasn't out there. It was inside. Inside their own building, their own archive. 6 pages. In a folder nobody remembered filing. A statement. From 1975. Taken. Dismissed. Shelved. And it stayed shelved through Coffey, through Molesky, through every retirement, and every dead end. Every 8 years. Until 2013. When one detective pulled the wrong drawer and found the right file, nobody makes movies about this part of police work. A detective, alone, going box by box, through an archive, old folders, faded ink, paper that hasn't been touched in decades. That's where this case broke. Not in a lab, not in an interrogation room, in storage. It's 2013. Montgomery County Cold Case Unit. Detective Chris Homrock is working through the Lyon records. When he pulls a file he doesn't recognize. It's thin. 6 pages. That's the whole thing. He starts reading. And what he's holding is a witness statement, given to police in April 1975, 1 week after the girls disappeared. The witness is an 18-year-old, and this kid isn't calling in a vague tip. He's claiming he watched the abduction happen. He walked into a police station on his own and described it. So why had no one ever heard of this? Because of what happened next, back in 1975. Officers sat him down and strapped him to a polygraph. He failed it. And when they pressed him on the results, he admitted it. He'd made things up. Now put yourself in those officers' shoes for a second. There's a $9,000 reward hanging over this case, and rewards pull people out of the woodwork. Fake witnesses, attention seekers, storytellers, failed polygraph, admitted fabrication, reward on the table. The math seemed obvious. Reward chaser. They dismissed him, sent him home, filed the statement, and for 38 years, that was that. But Homrock, reading it in 2013, does one thing those officers never did. He asks a different question. Not, was this kid lying? But, why was this kid here at all? Because look at it again. He put himself inside that mall on the exact day he described an abduction with specifics. Failing a polygraph proves the story had lies in it. It doesn't prove he wasn't there. So Hamrock pulls the young man's mugshot, and everything stops. The face in that photo matches the composite sketch. The sketch from Chapter 1. The young man a child had to confront for staring too long at the Leon sisters. Same long hair, same age range, same face. For 38 years, those two documents lived in the same archive. The sketch of a man watching the girls, and a statement from a man claiming he watched them taken. Nobody had ever laid them side by side. Now here's where the mugshot itself came from. Because that detail matters. It was taken in 1977, 2 years after the girls vanished. The charge was burglary. He'd stolen jewelry. And the location of that burglary? Roughly 8 blocks from Wheaton Plaza. He never left the area. The mall, the statement, the burglary, every data point orbits the same few blocks. So Hamrock's team runs the obvious next question. Where is this man? Right now? The answer comes back. And it's chilling in its own right. He's 56 years old now. And he's sitting in a Delaware prison, serving 33 years. The conviction? Offenses against a 10-year-old girl. Sit with that fact. Because it tells you something no interview ever could. 1975 to 2013. This man's record never went quiet. October 16, 2013. Hamrock and 2 colleagues make the drive to Delaware. They sit down across from him. The first contact between this man and this case, since 1975. The conversation lasts 8 hours. 8. When it's transcribed, it runs 232 pages. And in those 8 hours, he gives them plenty. He acknowledges it. He was at Wheaton Plaza, the day Sheila and Catherine disappeared. Confirmed. From his own mouth. But then comes the story. He claims he saw a man, dressed in a black suit, put the girls into a car. Someone else. A stranger. He's just a bystander. A witness. Same role he claimed back in 1975. And to lock it in, he signs an immunity agreement. A document stating he had nothing to do with the abduction. Nothing to do with their deaths. Detectives let him sign it. Let him talk. Let him build the whole account. Hour after hour. Not because they believed him. Because of something every cold case detective knows. A person telling the truth tells the same story twice. A person lying has to remember the lie. And across enough hours, enough sessions, enough pages, the lie starts to move. 232 pages was just the opening statement. Because liars talk. And every single word handed detectives another thread to pull. Lloyd Lee Welch. That's his name. The 18-year-old from the 6-page file. The face behind the composite sketch. The man in that Delaware prison. Lloyd Lee Welch. A drifter. A former carnival worker. And after 38 years, the center of this entire case. Before we go further, one quick thing. This channel exists for cases exactly like this one. Buried files. Forgotten statements. Investigations that took decades to give up their answers. Every episode is built from real court records and verified reporting. Days of research. Every time. If that's the kind of true crime you want, subscribe to Crime Watch Hub right now. Because what Welch did next generated 1,900 pages of evidence against himself. Here's how. After that first Delaware session, detectives came back, again and again. Roughly 9 more interviews over the following years. Multiple agencies, multiple detectives. Total transcript count, 1,900 pages. And across those pages, his story never stood still. Track the versions with me. Version 1. A minister, dressed in black, took the girls. Version 2. He saw the girls afterward, alive, at a third party's house. Version 3. The man responsible was his own uncle. Version 4. His own father. 4 versions, each one contradicting the last, each one moving himself a little closer to the crime, while pointing the blame at someone else. By 2015, he claimed his uncle masterminded the whole thing, claimed he personally witnessed one of the girls being harmed in a basement, said he left the house and never came back. And then he said the thing that told detectives who they were dealing with. He admitted he knew where the girls died, and he was withholding it, on purpose. He called that information his trump card, a bargaining chip. That's what it was to him. Now here's the investigative method that beat him, because this is the heart of the chapter. Detectives treated every version he told as a map, not a confession, a map. Every location he mentioned, every physical detail, got cross-referenced against the real world. If the place didn't exist, the version died. If the place matched, they dug deeper. You can't polygraph a building. Concrete doesn't change its story. So when Welch described a specific basement, detectives listened hard. Concrete construction, accessible only through a rear door, secured with a padlock. A hangout spot used by his family. They started searching Welch family properties, one by one. Most came back clean. Nothing matched. Then they reached a house on Baltimore Avenue, Hyattsville, Maryland. A house connected to Welch's father. The layout matched his description. Exactly. The basement, the rear access, all of it. A forensics team went into that back room and applied a blood-detecting reagent. It's a chemical that reacts to traces invisible to the naked eye, even after cleaning, even after decades. Then they switched on a blue light. The room lit up. Floor to ceiling, wall to wall. DNA testing confirmed the traces were human blood, too degraded, after nearly 40 years, to identify who. But the question of what that room had seen was over. One location confirmed. One more to go. Welch had told investigators he believed the girls' bodies were burned on a remote mountain, Bedford County, Virginia. Taylor's Mountain, 200 miles from Wheaton. Land owned by his own family. Same question as always. If he wasn't involved, how does he know that? FBI evidence recovery teams went to that mountain. They excavated across multiple seasons, grid by grid, sifting ash from a fire dating back to 1975. And the mountain answered. Small fragments of bone, human in origin, a single human tooth. A section of charred wire, consistent with Sheila's wire-rimmed glasses, and beads, similar to a necklace Catherine wore. Then came a witness, from inside the family itself, Welch's cousin, Henry Parker. Parker told investigators about a day, in the spring of 1975. Lloyd arrived on Taylor's Mountain, carrying 2 green Army-style duffel bags. Heavy ones, 60 to 70 pounds each. Parker said he didn't know what was inside. He helped burn them anyway. He was never charged. And that raised the bigger question, hanging over this whole reinvestigation. How much did this family know? The police captain leading the effort described what his team was up against as an ongoing conspiracy within the Welch family. A wall of silence, decades old. Another cousin, Thomas, said it flat out. Others were involved. Lloyd couldn't have done it alone. Now, let's be precise here, because accuracy matters. Richard Welch, Lloyd's uncle, the man Lloyd accused, was named a person of interest. He was never charged with any crime in this case. And remember where the accusation came from. A man whose story changed 4 times, across 1,900 pages. Richard's wife, however, was charged with perjury, accused of lying to the grand jury. By the time it was all assembled, the numbers told the story. Over 16,000 investigative hours. And in July 2015, a grand jury handed down the indictment. Lloyd Lee Welch, charged with murder in the deaths of Sheila and Catherine Lyon. 42 years after two sisters walked out of a shopping mall, Lloyd Welch finally stood in a courtroom. 42 years, 5 months, 18 days. That's the exact count, according to investigators. From the afternoon the girls left Wheaton Plaza to the morning this case finally reached a courtroom. September 12, 2017. Bedford County Circuit Court, Virginia. Why Virginia and not Maryland? Because prosecutors believed the girls' remains came to rest on Taylor's Mountain. The crime ended in Bedford County, so Bedford County got the case. In the gallery, John and Mary Lyon, both 77 years old, their sons beside them. A few feet away, Lloyd Lee Welch, now 60. Welch pleads guilty. 2 counts of first-degree felony murder. But listen closely to what he admits. He admits to participating in the abduction. That's it. He denies harming the girls, denies killing them, still pointing at his uncle and his father, one of them dead, the other never charged, and maintaining his innocence. So how does a man who denies the killings plead guilty to murder? 2 beats. That's all the law needs here. Beat 1. Felony murder doctrine. If you commit a serious felony, like abducting 2 children, and someone dies during that crime, the deaths are legally yours. Period. Beat 2. Welch admitted the abduction. The girls died. So under the law, who struck the final blow doesn't matter. He helped take them. Their deaths are on him, regardless. The sentence. And let's be precise. 2 48-year terms running concurrently. Alongside them, a 12-year term for unrelated offenses against children in Prince William County. All folded into the same 48 years. But none of it started right away. First, Welch had to finish his existing sentence in Delaware, and that took until January 2025. Only then was he transferred to Virginia to begin serving time for Sheila and Catherine. Because his crimes date back to 1975, parole technically exists for him. He'd be eligible in his mid-80s. The prosecutor's assessment of those odds? Slim to none. The prosecutor in Prince William County put it plainer. In his way of thinking, this is a life sentence. When the hearing ended, the judge gave Welch a chance to speak. He declined. 42 years of shifting stories, and at the end, nothing. Someone else spoke instead. Outside that courthouse, John Lyon stepped to a podium. And here's why that moment hit the entire D.C. region. For 22 years, his voice was Wall's morning sound, the swingman, the broadcaster half of Washington woke up to. Through the searches, through Coffey and Molesky, through every dead-end year, that voice kept showing up on air, steady, professional, while his own daughters were still missing. And when the radio career ended in 1990, he didn't retreat. He spent the next 20 years volunteering with Montgomery County's Victim Assistance Program, sitting in courtrooms, week after week, supporting other crime victims through their worst days. The prosecutor who saw him there didn't even realize at first this was the John Lyon, the one whose own case was still open. Nobody assigned him that work. He chose it. At the podium, he thanked the cold case detectives, said they'd treated Sheila and Kate like their own sisters, their own daughters. Then he closed with this. It's been a long, long time. We're tired, and we just want to go home. Mary Lyon passed away in June 2024. John followed. In June 2025, he was 85. Neither of them ever got to bury their daughters. The mountain gave back fragments. There is no grave to visit, and their oldest son, Jay, the 15-year-old from Chapter 1, grew up to become a homicide detective. A career spent handing other families the answers his own family waited 42 years to receive. Sheila Lyon, wire-rimmed glasses, 12 years old. Catherine Lyon, a piggy bank on her dresser, 10. 2 honor roll students, who did nothing wrong on an ordinary Tuesday. One last thing, and it's the most useful thing in this entire story. Remember who produced the single best piece of evidence, in this case. Not an adult, not an officer. A 12-year-old friend, who noticed a man staring and confronted him. Her description became the sketch that identified Welch 38 years later. A child saw it. The systems around her in 1975 just weren't built to act on it. Yours can be. If there are kids in your life who walk anywhere alone, teach them 3 permissions. It's okay to say something. It's okay to leave. It's okay to make noise. And if a child tells you someone feels wrong, believe them first. Ask questions second. If this case stayed with you, drop a comment and tell me which moment hit hardest. The briefcase, the 6 pages, the mountain, and subscribe to Crime Watch Hub before you go, because the next forgotten file is already open on my desk. And what's inside it? You won't believe.